Okay, so we are going to react to a video that just premiered on a channel called Go Do Your Own Research. The channel only has like 40 something subscribers, but a couple of their videos have got a lot of views over the last few weeks. So yeah, this is a video that appears to be somewhat critical of both Adam22 and Mark Leda. And as anybody that watches my channels knows, I am highly critical of both Adam22 and Mark Leda. So I'm just hoping that we can react and watch this video together, and that we can maybe have a little bit of a kumbaya after some very, let's say, awkward last few weeks. Most of these people are people that I was in a Discord server with, both the person who's making the film, some of the channels that they are using to supplement their video, as well as pretty much every single person in the chat was a part of a Discord server that I was from that was supposed to be, well, it was run by another channel called High Priestess Steph that was allegedly working on behalf of that surprise witness, but that turned out not to be the case. But let's not let that distract from the good qualities of this video that we're about to watch now. So without further ado, let's watch. Okay, so there's no audio yet. I think we're just waiting for the video to start. Just want to make sure that I'm, yeah, so we're playing at a pretty fast speed, just to kind of get through it without taking up too much time. Okay, so there's going to be like the 2-minute, you know, oh, it's only a minute, thank goodness. It's only a minute for the premiere, so that's good. All right. I don't think I need to pause it while this is going on, but I'm going to try to pause it every 30 seconds anyway, just in case anybody wants to copyright strike me or whatever, because there are other creators' videos used in this. So the title is, Are Adam22 and Mark Leda Slave Masters, the Kings of Clout Chasing?
The content featured in the following broadcast is purely for educational information purposes. It is based on real-life experiences and POV. Do not contact anyone featured or referred to in this video.
And please do your own research.
Ignorant and offensive. What you see here is both ignorant and offensive. Why is blackface offensive? Because in the 1830s and 40s, white.
Okay, so she starts out with this creator who I know I've seen him before, but I can't remember his name. I think he does the videos Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man, I think. He looks familiar to me from that. And I'm not sure if either Mark Leda and or Adam22 are going to be shown wearing blackface, which is completely offensive to pretty much everybody that I would ever come into contact with. Let's see.
Entertainers would take grease paint, painting their skin black to mimic and mock slaves. They would take this tour on the road throughout the country for the amusement of white individuals. Keep in mind, the main character of these minstrel shows was called Jim Crow. That is where Jim Crow laws.
Right. So Jim Crow is, they're just giving us a history of how the term Jim Crow came to be.
Came from. Now, furthermore, why is this so offensive? Because if you wanted to display someone from jail for Halloween, just go as a white individual. Because contrary to popular belief, it's not just black and brown individuals that are in jail. So.
True. I'm a white individual who's been to jail plenty of times, so that's facts. Facts right there.
Why again is such actions offensive? Because it is reminiscent of the 1830s and 40s, the heyday of slavery. So for those that are unaware why blackface is offensive, please share this and educate the masses.
In this video, we're going to look at two white male privileged podcasters and how they treat.
Okay, so Sophie says right there, white male privileged podcasters. Okay. I mean, I use that phrase a lot too. I do. So I'm going to roll with it for now. Let's see.
Black culture and how it equates to modern day slavery and blackface. We're going to start with Adam.
So it equates to modern day slavery and blackface. So that's a pretty bold statement. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I just want to hear what proof is used here to back it up.
22 of No Jumper fame. I'm not saying he paints his face black, but what he does.
And see how she just put that address on the screen without putting the city? I thought that was an interesting editorial choice. And we'll get into that in a minute when we see who's commenting in Sophie's chat.
Is the equivalent of. So my understanding is he became big in the BMX world, and a little birdie told me that a video they made where they was riding over homeless people was featured on CNN.
Okay, so the video was Featured on CNN. All right.
And
Okay.
they went viral, and the website blew up. And on the back of that, it looks like he was able to open his own store in LA, and he was trying to do the same thing for BMXing as skateboarding. Now, I don't know him personally, but I know an awful lot about hip-hop culture. I grew up with it, and I do know...
Do the same thing for BMXing as skateboarding. I'm not sure what that meant exactly, but please comment in the chat or in the comments if you know what Sophy was. This creator here, go do your own research. Her first name is Sophy. You'll see people referring to her in the chat as Sophy in a minute. So
someone who grew up in the same area as him, who has given me what I consider to be...
Okay, someone who grew up in the same area as him. Yes, one of the people that was in this Discord server did tell me that they had grown up in the same area as Adam Graham Mason. So
reliable information. And this being 2024, the year of truth, I thought I'd take a closer look into it because there are other black commentary channels suggesting that he's like a modern day slave owner and he exploits mainly black people for clout, getting them to confess to things and having fights. And that he...
Okay, so Graham Mason denies ever trying to exploit Jane. She intentionally cultivated a sexual image for herself and made the decision to discuss her actions on the show. I merely gave her a platform by having her on the show several times. Okay, is that Steve-O that he's talking to right there? I can't see behind the text, but
obsessed with gang culture and he's throwing everyone under the bus and creating a...
Oh no, that wasn't Steve-O. That was some other dude. Okay. All right, so nothing in this video is confirmed or stated as a fact in any way. This is all speculation and rumors. This video should not be taken seriously. Okay.
Deliberately unsafe and violent environment in which people have to go to work.
I showed up my armed security, and your security guy was like, well, he can't come in with a gun. And I'm like, we ain't going in there. Yeah. But I'm not going into this building without our armed security. Anything could happen.
Yeah, I know the feeling of not wanting to go anywhere without armed security. I know that feeling quite well. Quite well, Rambo Lola.
I'm sure you saw the situation where fucking 16 shot him spit in Flacco's face. I mean, if that situation, oh, you missed someone?
I missed that one.
Flacco, they get arguing whatever, and he ends up spitting in his face.
They were suffering in viewership for a minute. The only time that they views went up was when there was an almost fight taking place.
Like, just to be clear, I'm the only one of my siblings that has not been yet assaulted with a firearm. One of my siblings was shot more than once with a firearm. Another sibling was orally assaulted, or forced to perform an oral sex act on a man while he held a gun to her head. So yeah, I do take personal safety very seriously, especially when crossing paths with people who have crossed paths with people like this. Just saying.
Or some type of Jerry Springer style nonsense and content that would draw attention. People want to see some nonsense happen. They want to see the shock value. All right? No double turning to Jerry Springer for the most part. You dig?
WWE guy.
I'm staring at you in the face and telling you that you missed what I'm saying. You want to talk outside face to face?
Okay, so just guys arguing, just pausing every 30 seconds or so to just not get more copyright strikes.
What's that mean? What's it getting close to me? What's it grabbing my...
I think I'm gonna put this on like my third or fourth channel because I'm dealing with 2 copyright strikes from C-Files the Carney right now on my main channel, which is just ridiculous. They usually go away, but it takes quite some time for them to go away. And I don't mean waiting the 90 days. I mean, I challenge any of these copyright strikes as long as I'm made aware of them quickly enough. And yeah, I mean, I'm waiting to, he's at this point, C-Files the Carney either needs to file a lawsuit against me in federal court in Boston or quit copyright striking me, because that's basically what my notice from YouTube said. So I certainly don't want go do your own research to start filing any copyright strikes against me for using their content.
Like and subscribe.
I don't want to do anything bad. I'm trying to get to you.
And that's C-Files the Carney is another person from the same Discord server that was run by High Priestess stuff. So just to give some context for people that are just kind of tuning in to watch this for some reason other than because they already know what me and my channel are about.
I don't agree with
He's there trying to figure out how he can still make money out of it. He's got people on the show, ex-gangsters, real gangsters, confessing to all sorts, taking it outside the studio, going live outside people's houses.
Okay, yeah. So that's what that's an accurate description that Sophie's giving of what Adam 22 does.
You're in the Illuminati? What?
Oh.
Because he's part of it, dude.
Right.
He's part of like...
Okay, so this is where it gets a little scary for me personally when they start talking about like well, I'm going to let them talk. I'm just going to pause and say ouch whenever something hits me kind of hard. So we'll just do it that way.
You know, the whole Clinton mafia.
So,
Ouch. Clinton mafia, ouch.
The whole thing.
my pops.
So my source told me he lived in a super rich part of town and his parents rubbed shoulders with the Clintons, the Rockefellers, and the Rothschilds. But is it me or is...
Yep. The source said something not quite specific to me, but similar.
he really trying to play this down?
Do you not know this?
And I'm assuming it's the same source because the person who was my source shows up in the chat in a minute. So
You don't subscribe to the Plus channel. She doesn't know. Anyway.
He's bona fide Illuminati.
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
I take back my engagement ring.
okay. So that's Adam 22's wife, Lena, the PLUG. And she apparently didn't know that about Adam's family's connection to the, as they said it, organization.
You just want to show off the ring.
Oh, I take like this ring.
My dad was kind of like a low-level Democratic operative, like helping people's campaigns early on.
Low-level Democratic operative. Yeah, I knew a lot of quote unquote low-level Democratic operatives, and that's how I got to meet Hillary Clinton back in 1995. Story for another time.
Early 90s. 92.
Wow,
He was an alderman in the city of Nashua, New Hampshire.
Alderman in the city of Nashua, New Hampshire. Okay, then they're going to ask him what's an alderman.
You know, it's
Kind of like as low as you could really be on the local governance totem pole, but he was doing his thing. And he wanted to be mayor or something.
All right, so his father was a social worker. Another reason for me to be petrified of these people. I love librarians. Librarians are my favorite profession in the world. Social workers are my most hated profession. So raised by a female librarian and a male social worker who also was a quote unquote low-level Democratic operative who became a felon later. So yeah, a little scary to be crossing paths with people like this in the general Merrimack Valley area where I have lived for many, many years now.
We could turn it into something. I think we have a real skeptic on here.
Can we bust out some conspiracy corner right now? Hold on. Let's just wait for it. And action. Okay, good. Okay, as you were.
Okay, because if there's anything that scares me more than gunfire, it's social workers. If you know, you know.
As you were, Mr. 22. Okay.
Okay, New Hampshire.
Low-level operative, right? Yes.
You kind of have to win New Hampshire in the primaries, at least then, if you wanted to have a shot.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of political influence in New Hampshire. So even though it's a small state, it is very close to Massachusetts, which is a physically small but very densely populated state with a lot of power. And essentially, New Hampshire sort of serves as a well, it's very close by. Like I probably right now am closer. I live in Massachusetts, but I'm probably closer to Nashua, New Hampshire right now, where I'm sitting, than I am to Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm certainly closer to Nashua, New Hampshire than I am to Worcester, Massachusetts. I'm certainly closer to Nashua than I am to Springfield, Massachusetts, or New Bedford, Massachusetts. So Essex County, Massachusetts is essentially the greater Nashua, Manchester area, in my opinion. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Also, kind of important then to be a local operative in New Hampshire, right?
He was clever enough.
The greater Nashua, Manchester, New Hampshire area, because there's also a Manchester, Massachusetts.
We're lucky enough to serve on Bill Clinton's first election campaign, in New Hampshire, help them win New Hampshire.
Okay, so serve on Bill Clinton's first election campaign. I knew people who served on his re-election campaign. And that's why I met Hillary Clinton in '95, because he was already had been in office for several years, and I think it was right around the time that the Lewinsky scandal came out that I got to meet Hillary. So clearly she wasn't it wasn't her best day when I got to meet her.
Probably realistically didn't play that big a role.
Probably not. Probably not.
My dad called
Last name is Grand Mason. I'm not sure what that means. I would always say Grand Maison, but I guess Grand Mason maybe has ties to Masonic organization. I don't know.
a federal charge for mail fraud because
Oh, that was his uncle, Joseph Grand Mason. Okay.
he allegedly was using his role as an alderman to basically get the construction company that he was employed by work, get jobs.
What's an alderman for us dummies?
It's just
Okay. Get the construction company that he was employed by work. Okay, so yeah, like he was using influence to get contracts for a construction company. But it's interesting because if he was a social worker, what was he doing working for a construction company? Just saying.
like a really, really low, it would be like a senator.
All right, so here comes someone saying Lena had no idea. Keep an eye on this person's comments because they have some interesting things to say.
Or a tiny
Cha-ching.
city helping to make decisions. Whatever. No, he allegedly was using his power to get more work for his boss. The way he told me is basically that, like the feds wanted to get his boss and that he wouldn't snitch on him. So he ends up having to do a plea.
The feds wanted to get his boss and he wouldn't snitch on him, so he ended up doing a plea deal. Okay. But again, why is a social worker working for a construction company? Unless he was a school social worker and he had the summer off and worked for the construction company. unless he was working unless he was working for a construction company while he was younger before he became a social worker. It's interesting. Or unless it was indeed the uncle and not the father that was the construction worker, and the father, again, just questions ain't definition.
He was 1 year in federal prison in 1995, and then Bill Clinton issued
1 year in federal prison in 1995. So that's interesting because that's when I met Hillary Clinton. Interesting timing. Didn't know anything about that.
a series of presidential pardons, as they do. He issued like 30, I think, 40 pardons.
Of all the people that Bill Clinton met in his life that went to prison, he chose to pardon someone who was already out
Chose to pardon someone who's already out of prison. Interesting.
of prison.
But they made it so that he was no longer a felon and he could vote, which was very important about it.
Wow.
Helping kind of clear up his name.
Important so that he could vote, which is interesting because Massachusetts allows felons to vote, unlike other states. But I guess in New Hampshire, you needed to be pardoned in order to be able to vote after a felony conviction.
Yeah, I listen to my dad as not talked to Bill Clinton since, or probably before that for like maybe 10 years, but
Has he been on the plane?
I think it's pretty well known that he
Has he been on the plane? That was an interesting question. The Coercive World of No Jumpers, Adam 22. He exploited me from day one. This is from Rolling Stone. The Desiree Story Part 1. She was 16, but come on, man, look at her. She's 18 or 19 in most of the picture, but she didn't look much different at all then as such. Wow. Wow.
was allegedly grooming an underage girl. There's actually so many allegations, and
There's him and his wife. Well, I guess it was his girlfriend at that time. Okay. It's from December 13, 2018.
dehumanizing comments and tweets. It's hard to know what's part
All right.
of his marketing and what isn't. And then I came across this footage where
Catfish. Okay. Who would be more likely to own a blank, me or you? I don't know what catfish is, but it's interesting because this prior video that this creator participated in, go do your own research, aka Sophy, participated in a video last week or the week before, 2 videos, where they accused me of being part of a catfishing cult. So it's just interesting that they chose this with catfish. Probably completely unrelated, but again, just providing commentary. Commentary ain't defamation, and commentary ain't copyright strikeable.
he's clearly hanging out with school kids. He definitely falls under low self-esteem, high ego.
Bill Clinton gynecologist.
Yeah, it looks like you took them to some kind of a sports game or something.
No, that's not us. We made a porno.
According to this,
It's just so gross, really gross. So I give you respect, Sophy, for doing this video. I truly do. I have no criticism of it so far. This is just commentary, not criticism at this point.
Rolling Stone article from 2017, he went from earning 6 figures to having to go back to sell weed again.
Yeah, which interesting because he lives in California now, obviously. So it's probably perfectly legal to sell weed in California. But another interesting fun or not so fun fact is that I live in Massachusetts, where smoking and recreational weed is completely legal, like totally legal. Like there's a dispensary on practically every corner, dispensary or recreational pot shop on every corner. But I used to work just over the border in New Hampshire, and it was completely illegal there. And so I was working for a mental health organization there where some of the guests were smoking marijuana, which again, like, as far as I know, if a cop came by and one of our guests was smoking marijuana on the property, like that would be cause for arrest. I don't know. The laws may have changed, but it's just interesting to see how places that are literally like you cross one street and you're in Massachusetts and you go across the other side of the street and you're in New Hampshire. That's how it is around here. So,
And it seems like he jumped to his next discovery and made his next come up on the back of SoundCloud rappers.
and I have no judgment about people who smoke marijuana. I don't smoke marijuana often, but I certainly did it when it was highly illegal, and I did it when I was underage to even drink, much less smoke or do drugs. So yeah, I mean, I smoked marijuana from the first time when I was 16 in Louisiana, and most recently, I don't know when's the last time I smoked marijuana. I kind of switched over to gummies and fizzies after a while.
So he had a podcast studio at
Okay, so here's Illyria saying, I have a lot of sympathy for the things she, meaning Lena, probably has to go through. But man, do people make terrible choices when money and clout are involved? True that.
back of the shop, and no one was really interested in BMX anymore, but they were interested in SoundCloud rappers, and his studio became the local hangout spot for them. And note, a lot of these
Okay, so he pivoted from BMX to SoundCloud rappers. Got it. There's a band from New Orleans, a white band from New Orleans called the Suicide Boys. I had never heard of them before. But some guy I know locally here who's from New Hampshire, by the way. All roads lead to Nashville, as I said. So yeah, this dude's from New Hampshire, but he works in Massachusetts, and he told me about Suicide Boys because he knows how much I love New Orleans, where I'm from. And anyway, so I Googled Suicide Boys, and the first thing that pops up is an interview that Adam 22 did on his podcast, No Jumper. So I was like, ew, I don't know if I want to even dig any deeper into this music, even though the music itself was okay, not my favorite, but not awful either.
rappers were still really children. And there was a rapper called XXX Tentacion who did an interview, and the video got over 20 million views before he went to jail and then ended up unalived. And allegedly Drake
XXX Tentacion and Drake took over for him. Okay, I wonder what year this would be. I can always Google it. But yeah, that's an interesting tidbit that Sophie puts in here that I hadn't been aware of before.
took on his style. He became known for getting people exposure. He apparently had a record deal. He took a 16-year-old Little Perp on tour to get more content for his channel. To my knowledge, none of those things turned out too great for him.
Little Perp, I don't know if that's the rapper's name or if Sophie's just calling this person Little Perp. I don't know.
He's tried being to his wife and other aspiring OnlyFans girls. I mean, have you?
So Sophie says, you missed the BMX film with the homeless. I do hate when people say the homeless. I probably say it myself sometimes. But when I worked for Boston Healthcare for the homeless, we were always required to say the much longer phrase, people experiencing homelessness.
The expression he would sell his own grandmother, and he's done it all in plain sight with the support of his peers, building up millions of followers. It's like he's gone from being the go viral guru to we're now at the thin end of the wedge.
Like the clip of
Okay. Fair enough.
running up on Flacco has 500,000 views and has made exactly like.
All right. Adam calls Bryce something behind closed doors, and he's cool with it. All right.
$50 on YouTube. Because just to put it in perspective.
Yeah, I just heard something recently, like in the last couple of weeks, that somebody, a gay Black man who had worked for Adam's podcast, No Jumper, was accusing Adam of sexual harassment and other things, and just a hostile work environment. So I forget the gentleman's name that was saying that, but I think he has a lawyer and is either about to or has filed a suit against Adam 22. So I would love it if maybe somebody like BJ would cover that, or maybe I'll do it if I can find the paperwork. I don't know. Not that I have very much legal knowledge or education, but I do have at least a minuscule amount that I would like to use for good things, like showcasing people who are standing up to Adam 22.
Of like how much these viral moments actually end up being worth, which I think a lot of people kind of get the wrong idea about.
That black doll is kind of crazy. Was this all a setup?
Yeah, that is kind of an interesting choice for him to have that over his shoulder. That's an interesting choice. So yeah, the gang's all here in the chat. See Illyria Sands, Sophie, Nola Lola, and Divine Vigor.
And that black doll right there is kind of wild.
Didn't notice Steph, but Steph's not really a live chat kind of a person for the most part.
The black doll behind him is insane. Was this a setup, bro? There's no way this is happening. It was no coincidence that dressed up like a slave master and had a black doll behind him. Is it?
I did read that when he set up the BMX.
That's an interesting observation.
shop,
Yeah.
people could live there.
Not interesting in a good way. It's a pertinent observation.
Return for working at the store. I feel like he's cosplaying
So people could live at the BMX shop in return for working at the store. Okay. Interesting.
to feed off the culture. And people like him have contributed to the destruction of hip-hop. He has a corporate mindset and he treats everyone terribly, but they seem to go back for more.
Yeah, he does have a corporate mindset and he does treat people terribly. And that's what I'm saying. This lawsuit was filed fairly recently or is about to be filed. Okay, so what does Illyria say over here? He used to do a lot of that stuff in his hometown too. What he really enjoys is being a degenerate. LOL. Okay.
Which says a lot about the people he hangs out with. He has no talent of his own, and I'm not even going to comment on the substance abuse that is clearly going on. So now we're going to move on to one of his pals, Mark, later. And
Ugh. Yuck. Mark Lita. Yuck, yuck.
coincidentally, he also made a name for himself using people on Skid Row for content.
No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. And today we have somebody who I'm a huge fan of. Yeah, totally, man. Mark of Software Underbelly.
And I'm extremely grateful to a channel called...
Okay, yeah, the Great Plague was also in the same Discord server that I'm talking about. Like, he didn't join until like a day or two before I was unceremoniously booted from the server. But while I was in there with him, I enjoyed, saying hello to him and such. And I do enjoy his content, although some of his content is extremely raw and hard to watch, but that doesn't mean it's not well made. It just means, for me personally, it can be a little bit more triggering than I can tolerate sometimes. But that's on me. That's not on him.
The Great Plague, who has for years been watching and analysing his channel, The Soft White Underbelly, because I really couldn't stomach it. And I know he's photographed homeless people for years. He acts like it's nothing, and like, why should I have to do anything because you all don't do anything? But just like Adam22 thinks it's okay
Okay, just pausing.
to do stunts over them, there's boundaries, there's respecting people's space. And in my opinion, he's made their trauma into a commodity. So like Adam...
I agree. He has made their trauma into a commodity. Good observation, Sophie.
Mark was obsessed with virality going viral, and he's documented himself that the first video that blew up for him was of a young black woman named Kelly and how her pimp came to his studio and begged him to film her on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, that was really a weird anecdote right there. Oh, and somebody sent me something recently saying that Mark Lita's daughter had just gotten out of like a year in rehab or something. I don't know if that had anything to do with Lima. I don't know, but it was somebody who sent me a lot of others. Oh no, it was maybe a different. I don't know. I get anonymous things here and there, but yeah, somebody sent me something about Mark Lita's daughter, Olivia. I think her name is Olivia Lita.
Which he then proceeded to upload at Christmas, because that's what his priorities are. But then he'll...
And I'm pretty sure the daughter's an adult, so if it was a child, I certainly wouldn't be talking about it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure she's a young adult.
Say, oh yeah, I work every day of my life. Hashtag no days off. But he'll have a go at absence of fathers in the household, ironically. So he had interviewed a young...
She's a paid actor. I've known her for 5 years, and I feel ashamed to even speak about the amount of lies she said. Well, that's an interesting bit of insight. I don't doubt any of this. I don't doubt any of it.
Worker called Kelly, and he realized that this was where...
I mean, as someone who myself was homeless for quite some time and who who was never a paid actor, but my image was used more than once for things that were either media or film related. Yeah, we'll get into that in another video.
The views were, this is where the clout was. And even though she begged him to remove it, he refused, and that's just exactly what Adam22 did. And I have been on sets many, many times in my own personal life. I've met many Mark later, and the model is so vulnerable on the set, very, very often with very little clothes on.
Yeah, I remember Sophie talking about her experience in the photography and modeling and, entertainment world. I do remember that. I wasn't really participating much in those conversations because I didn't know too much about it, but I do remember some pretty specific comments she had made back in the fall of last year.
Got him and a bunch of other people directing her, telling her what to do, telling her what positions to get into. She's defenseless. And that was one of the reasons why I left the fashion industry, because it was so toxic. And so
well, good on you. I'm sure that was probably not an easy choice financially. And I hope it has worked out. I hope it has worked out financially and otherwise for you to leave that toxic industry. Respect. Sincerely, no shade, respect.
Mark befriended and looked up to pimps because they gave him access, I guess. And as the Great Plague has pointed out, he glorified the sexification and the really worst aspects of what is going on in our society. Under the guise...
Yes, Mark does glorify the sensational and the disturbing, the depraved. In my opinion, he glorifies the depraved.
Of journalism, and a lot of people bought into it and still do. And one thing I couldn't help noticing when I started investigating these two is there's quite a lot of suggestions that some of the people that appear in front of the camera aren't who they say they are, that they're putting on act.
Okay, aren't who they say they are. That's a loaded phrase lately coming out of this person's mouth, Sophie. But again, I'm honest about who I am, so you know how to reach me, and you choose not to, and that's cool. But please don't say I'm someone other than who I say I am, because I'm just me, just Bonnie. In fact, I'll flash the camera on for a quick second, just so you can see my messy hair. It's just me. Okay, you can make fun of that. You can, that Bully Busters channel or whatever can make fun of my ugly, crazy, loopy hair. Turning the camera off now. All right, moving on.
And it's hard to know either way, but either way, I do believe they are being exploited. So I came across him via the story of Amanda Rabb, a young woman.
Okay, so Sophie is saying that she figured out who Mark Leda was by the story of Amanda Rabb. And Amanda Rabb is one of the numerous victims of Lima from Aura, which is what had sort of united us all under BJ's content umbrella a year or so ago. Just to give some context
Who
here.
unfortunately passed away after he got millions of people to know about her on his channel. And when she first appeared, she seemed pretty healthy. But by the end, which was only a few months later, she was
Yeah, when Amanda first appeared, she seemed very healthy. She didn't seem too skinny. She didn't seem too fat. She seemed like she was, even though she was admitting to working as a sex worker at that time, and she was not wearing a bra in this video, and her nipples could kind of peek out from the side of her thing. She just looked kind of cute and age appropriate in those overalls. But the subsequent times Amanda came on, she just looked really, really, really bad. And see, what we see on camera with Mark never compares to what's on the cutting room floor or what happens when the cameras are shut off. Just remember that. Just remember that. Mark's very intentional in when he turns the camera on and when he doesn't. And Mark's very intentional in what he puts on his channel versus what he keeps behind a Patreon wall versus what he probably only shares, you know, in private, like very, very private.
really addicted to drugs and died in a rehab facility. Pretty over.
So yeah, that's Amanda. That's Amanda not long after, you know, like just she really lost a lot of weight and disintegrated before she got forced into this rehab in Las Vegas, where she gained a lot of weight and passed away.
And he took no accountability for directing this whole scenario. He is like a Jerry Springer.
No, he never took any accountability. He certainly did not. In fact, he tried to take credit for saving Amanda, even though she's no longer alive.
Or in this country, we have Jeremy Kyle, whose show was taken off air because someone unalived themselves. And if anyone pushes back against him,
Jeremy Kyle, I should look that up. I've never heard of that person before.
he tries to shut them up or he ridicules them in the comments. He's just pushing that idea in the bro sphere of the strong alpha man and making money. And oh yeah, well, people get hurt. It is what it is. And there's been...
Yeah, I mean, but it's not just men who try to make money. It's not just bros. Plenty of content just try to make money. And, you know, I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist or anything like that. I don't begrudge anyone the right to make money off of their content. I just think when somebody's content is so focused on exploiting people at the very, very, very bottom edge of society, there ought to be some kind of profit sharing, like some sort of equitable profit sharing. Not mandated, but just out of decency, you know, like Mark shouldn't get to profit off of Amanda and then also be called a hero for starting a GoFundMe for the Whitakers. If Mark would have just agreed to give the Whitakers like 2% of the revenue for all their videos, then there wouldn't have needed to be a GoFundMe. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, Mark's house just sold for what? Was it 20 million? $24 million Mark's house sold for? I forget. Somebody sent that to me during the week.
Various controversies about his GoFundMes that he set up, apparently in response to the fact that people had sussed on that people were getting exploited. But even if he does give the people who appear in the videos some of the GoFundMe money, which he chooses what to pay them, look how many videos he makes about them with a...
Yeah, and just to the people who do send me things, I don't always remember whether I get it on Instagram or I get it on email. I try not to think too much about who sends me different things, because that way I don't run the risk of accidentally saying who sent me something if they're not wanting me, you know, wanting their name to get credit for it. So that's an intentional thing on my part to just sort of go through email and not really pay attention to who the sender is, and then like download what I need to download and then archive the email. So I don't need to go back and like look through and screenshot original emails and block out people's names and all that. It's just the way I do things. So if I show your actual name, it's intentional. And if I hide your actual name, it's also intentional. And if I show your name when you wanted me to hide it, or if I hide your name when you want me to show it, you just need to let me know, and I'll do better next time. Okay.
He made 14 videos. Some of them have got like 5 million, 6 million views. How much money does
And if you accuse me of doxing you when I didn't even know your name, and then I, show your name later to say this is the person who accused me of doxing them, honestly, I'm just trying to prove that I didn't even know your name. So how could I have doxed you if I didn't even know your name? But now if you're saying I've doxed you, it's only to rebut your false accusation that I had doxed you. So go ahead, dox me. I don't care.
he make off of her being in a vulnerable state in his studio, and the poor woman ends up unalive, and he was there filming her like.
Okay. That's awful and tragic.
Days before she passed.
I was like, oh man, this could go badly.
So yeah, he filmed her on April 8th, and she passed away on May 9th of that same year in the rehab in Las Vegas.
Months you've been here.
Right, 7.5 months of my sentencing.
I mean, does that seem at all sus to you? But he never looked into how she died. You could argue he had a little.
Nope, he sure never did look into how she died. BJ did, though. And people have been trying to silence BJ ever since.
PR tour to make sure his version of events was the main narrative. I think he made a whole list of people who have passed away after being on.
Then he moved some in his house to be their live-in girls. Huh. That's an interesting comment by Nola Lola.
His channel. I found this
That's weird. The comment appeared and then it went away. Not sure about that.
by
Okay.
the student lawyer, Modern Slavery, Slave Contracts, Human and Labour Rights. The concern with slave contracts in the corporate world is that the strand of modern slavery it is built on is not glaring or outrightly obvious even to the employee. This
Interesting. So this is in the corporate world.
inevitably causes potential artists or employees to sign contracts with red flags splattered conspicuously all over the contract. Additionally, this would lead to them forming harmful contractual relationships with employers who have no regard for the labour and human rights of its workers.
Yeah, again, I'm a free enterprise type of a person, and it's very hard for me to work for someone else because I think there is a lot of exploitation in the employment world. So I prefer to either work for myself or be an independent contractor or not work, because working for others is, to me, I mean, I coined this phrase. I don't know if I coined it, but I sort of started using the hashtag employment is the new slavery back in 2011, 2012. So yeah, 13 years ago. And it hasn't gotten any better.
I think one of the worst aspects of what he is doing comes under the term CP, which we
Yes, that is terrible. It's awful what he's doing.
know is absolutely rife on social media. And I think the idea that he can portray a child of 13 as a worker, just like that, it's all how he says it is, and it is just immoral. And, well, comment below what you think. So yeah, I don't think a child.
Okay, just pausing here. So it looks like there were 12 people watching at this point, 8 thumbs up. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a really, it's been hard for me to kind of get into the swing of what this channel is all about, but so far, I don't agree with everything on it, but I appreciate the work that obviously has gone into it, and I appreciate the straightforward style. I appreciate the visual style that is much less esoteric than some other people from this group have put out recently.
At that age makes the decision to do that. But we will leave on some analysis from the Great Plague, and he observed.
I don't know if that was a good use of the word esoteric. Much less intentionally arty and much more straightforward and information focused, which I like.
That Mark has taken a lot of his cues from people who describe themselves as.
I like when people don't have to rhyme when they are doing a video about serious topics.
I'm shopping for a bird right now. Well, I'm for the skin for you right now. Look.
Oh, okay. So she amended her chat to say, then he lets these women in his house and plays like they are living girlfriends. TikTok is full of those stories. Interesting. I don't go on TikTok. I certainly believe it. That's probably one of the reasons why I don't go on TikTok. If she isn't experienced already, what do you tell her? Don Juan, you got to teach her. I'll tell you the story about how we turned out girls. Mark interrupts because I'm shopping for a brim right now. I don't know what brim means. Is it something to do with a hat? I don't know what that means.
It actually gets much worse from here, as Magic Don Juan explains in detail to his eager student.
Okay, so here's the Great Plague
How
again.
to pimp a woman. Don Juan starts with a disgusting story about one of his prostitutes who was shot 5 times and whose only concern was, quote-unquote, getting his money, even as she, quote-unquote.
Oh, that's terrible. But again, not shocking, not surprising. Just awful.
had tubes in her. Mark is duly impressed, even as the ordained holy man goes into graphic detail on how to mentally enslave a woman.
Ordained holy man. Oof. Like Albert Monero Jr. has a history in the corn industry, and then started a church with Lima Jovanovic, who is another woman who's capitalized on at least one, if not more, of Mark Lada's video subjects.
The interview ends with Don Juan admitting that he thinks it is necessary to physically beat black women to pimp them successfully, while he is goaded on by Mark saying, "You gotta get violent once in a while."
With a black girl.
Wow. Poor Amanda. My God. If we had only seen all this while she was still alive.
You got to put hands on her, or you ain't gonna be able to keep her, because she's gonna do things to make you put hands on her. So you got violence on her. You got to show her, smack her back into reality that who's boss.
So I think it's pretty clear what the
Yeah, he is violent. That's a good point. How does YouTube give him a pass? Money, 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 money. YouTube is making money off of him. He's making money off of YouTube. And people are lining up to be photographed by him because he's, an ex-corporate photographer. And I mean, like, look at these two photos side by side. If you take away the context and just look at them as photographs, people would probably say, yeah, those are really high quality photographs. People would want to say, oh, I want Mark to capture me the way he's captured all these hundreds of thousands of other people. I looked into whether Mark Lada had taken that photograph of Steve Jobs with the turtleneck, and the answer appears to be no. It appears that was taken by somebody else. But yeah, when I've seen these recent photographs of Brennan Seiler Bell Layton, who's another former member of the same Discord server I've been talking about, she looks like Mark Lada or someone close to him took the pictures. And in fact, Jamie, another member of this former Discord server, or another former member of this Discord server that may still be current, I don't know, or cloned. Nola said somebody cloned her. They cloned a server, that's for sure. But anyway, Jamie says that Brennan was asking Lima if they could meet at Mark's house, which I guess Mark has just recently sold. And then Brennan shows up with all these black and white photographs that look very similar to the style of Mark Lada, in my opinion. Coincidence? Possibly. Just putting it out there.
these two are up to. They are, of course, endorsed and celebrated by tech companies. We're not allowed to say certain words or talk about certain.
Well, I mean, are we really not allowed to say certain words? We're allowed to say them. You just won't be monetized. So I aggressively do not want to be monetized on YouTube. So I will say and do whatever it takes. And if my channel gets taken down, I will wear that as a badge of honor. Okay, I don't, as High Priestess Steph would say, I don't slave for the algorithm. I don't slave for robots, whatever. Like, I'm gonna be a human being on this platform. And if this platform shuts me down, then there's other platforms I can go continue to be a human being on, as a lot bigger content creators than I ever wanted to be have done before.
Topics, but they built their whole brand on it. I mean, Mark did claim to be the highest paid photographer at Apple, although how he came to know that information, we have no idea.
Well, I mean, he may have come to know that because, he was the head of the department, and he would have known the budget of that department. And if he had to approve the budget of the department, he could make sure that when he's looking at what other people got paid, that he got paid more. That's how I would think he would know that, having managed departments in companies before.
Isn't it time these types of entertainment came to an end? It would just be nice if people
could. I mean, would it be nice if these types of entertainment came to an end? It would be nice if these types of entertainment were not glorified. I mean, these types of entertainment have been going on for millennia, I mean, even watching something, supposedly like Christian themed, like The Chosen, there's a very erotic dance sequence from back in, the days of, King Herod and all that. So, I mean, yes, would it be nice if these types of entertainment came to an end? Possibly. But again, I don't want that to be legislated. And I also don't want that to mean that people are so dehumanized that there's no market for it because people no longer have sexual urges or desires or anything like that, which is what I think the pharmaceutical industry is trying to do. Like the pharmaceutical industry is trying to put out so many medications that have sexual side effects and then sell men a pill to get an erection. And then they're also trying to make human reproduction part of, pharmaceuticals and technology, as opposed to something people do in the privacy of their own bedrooms. So yeah, I think that's a kind of a loaded issue that Sophie brings up here, but I understand the sentiment behind it. I just think that logically it could lead places that nobody would really want it to go.
Wake up to what they're watching and just stop watching it. I don't know, maybe if we just stop looking up to people who have millions of followers off the back of the pain of others, we might get some.
Yeah, and again, I for one do not look up to Adam 22. I do not for one look up to Mark Leda. Never have, never will. In fact, sometimes when someone even gets like 50 or 60 or 100,000 followers, sometimes when somebody gets 25,000 followers, you notice changes in how they conduct their and how their content is presented and in the content itself. So yeah, it would be good if we didn't look up to people based on the number of followers they had, but on the content of their message. I think that's a very worthy endeavor.
And when anyone tries to challenge their perspective or open up a conversation in their world, anyone apart from them is broke or clout chasing, which...
Well, I think she might be sending a subtle dig to somebody right there. I'm not going to assume, but again, I would disagree with that generalization. If she is indeed trying to speak about someone who has a couple 100,000 subscribers on one channel and about 118 or 120,000 on the other channel.
Allegedly is what they are. I saw a couple of commentary channels had looked into whether the money he was raising on GoFundMe had been paid to...
And again, if I'm wrong, I do stand corrected. I hope that was just me reading far too much into a simple statement by Sophie that on the whole, I don't disagree with the meaning of it. I just was questioning the tone and the intent of that particular statement at that particular time.
The Whitakers.
But I mean, she hasn't even shown any kind of screenshots of BJ in this video, unlike the video from a couple of weeks ago. So I'm just going to assume that that's me being hypersensitive to anything that this group of, let's see, Sophie, Divine Vigor, Nola, Lola, Illyria, Sand, that this group of 4 women is harping on about lately.
Which he did actually respond to by showing receipts. I thought he got let off really lightly. None of these channels really looked into his context or background.
Okay. Wild Irish Man Biker. Tyler needs to find his own stream. Mark is respectful and honest, in my opinion. Tyler is typical social media. I thought Tyler did a great job. Tyler Oliveira. I thought he did a really good job. I mean, I think he didn't go overboard in either direction. I think he raised a red flag and then he sort of stated the comment, the sort of rebuttal to that red flag, and he moved on to something else, other red flags. So I don't think Tyler Oliveira did a bad thing.
Don't know why they took his word for it. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you on the next one.
Great work, Sophie. Excellent work. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.